Hi, I'm Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's R&K Software Club's video of the week, and the topic for today is Cutwork. And have you seen this beautiful Cutwork design that's part of the January 2020 free monthly designs? That's where you'll find it if you look in your library, provided you've already downloaded all of the free monthly designs from the R&K Software Club. Then they will appear in your library found on the right-hand side tab of your workspace. And so if you point it to January, so you kind of have to expand January and click on that month, and then hover over designs, you'll see the designs in that month. And so, yeah, there's this great Cutwork Flower design. There's also some cool applique gnomes. And there's some cool Happy New Year's designs and a beautiful Happy New Year sketch for you guys. And so, yeah, essentially, when you find a design that you want to work with in the side nav bar, you just left click on it and drag and let go of it over top of your empty workspace. And you can combine as many designs as you want, with that sort of method. So anyhow, let's talk about Cutwork, and I've actually brought today the photographs of me stitching this Cutwork design just so that I could go over kind of like the steps of actually stitching one out. And you'll notice in this design, if you look in the sewing sequence, that essentially, here, let's get rid of the, I'm going to hit undo to kind of get rid of the New Year's design. So this is what the actual design is. And notice that it's got two colors, but in actuality, I stitched it all in one color. So it's simply the first portion of the design, let's just recolor it so you can see what I'm talking about, is simply an embroidery design that sews first. And at the completion of kind of sewing all of the cool sort of decorative center, then it does the cut work. And so color 2 is actually a series of color stops, because if you look in your sequence view, you'll see that it's a cutwork shape. And if you click on the little kind of plus beside that shape, you'll be able to see the stops. And so it says that there's stop 1, stop 2, stop 3, and stop 4. 4 color stops when you create a cutwork design. And the first color stop is essentially a run stitch. And then you get some instructions. It says, before proceeding, cut away the fabric on the inside of the cut line. Make sure not to cut away the water-soluble stabilizer under the fabric. And so, reading that, I'm thinking, gee, maybe we could even consider inserting an instruction before the first color, which says kind of how it works, which is you need to hoop up your fabric together with wet and gone or water-dissolving stabilizer. And that is because of the way that we do the cutwork. And so what this says is cut away the fabric, make sure not to cut away the water dissolving stabilizer. And so the idea is, if you watch this design stitch out, and it'll do all that blue part first, and then at the end of the blue, it'll do basically a run stitch outline of the inside of that hole and the outside of that hole. So get right to there and stop. So you can see that it's drawn. And now you cut with your scissors and you trim out the fabric in this area here. And when you push start again, it basically does a zigzag. It walks all the way around the inside and the outside, sort of securing the fabric that you've trimmed away to the stabilizer. And what it said was, make sure not to trim the wet and gone or the water dissolving stabilizer. And because now the little bridges are going to sew over top of those, and the last color of the design is the borders. And so, again, I sewed my whole design out in red. But the stops were there for the times in the design. And so just to help you visualize that, and then we'll come back, I'll just show you the photographs. So basically, this is what the completed cutwork design looks like. It just happens that I've got it over top of kind of like a white background, so you're seeing white through the hole. But essentially, I started out and I made my sample on a piece of felt, on our Stitch and Shape felt. But of course, you could use this on fabric, put it into a shirt, jacket, skirt, pillow, anything you want. But the idea is, I've sewn the first 2 colors right now. So you can see that I've sewn that decorative center and completed that first run stitch. And so now I need to trim with my scissors, and I just carefully trim. Basically, you want to trim as close as you can to this run stitch as possible. And actually, the closer the better. Because the cover stitch really just comes right to this edge here. And more on that in a minute. So basically what I'm saying is I trim the fabric, but I don't trim the stabilizer. See how the wet and gone is sort of left. So essentially, maybe take one step backwards. Notice that I have a sheet of wet and gone hooped up together with a piece of stitch in shape. In your case, that could be a fabric. But whatever it is, you hoop them together in the hoop. And that way, when you trim your fabric out and make the hole, there's still wet and gone under the hole. And so this photograph shows it completed sewing. So I've finished trimming that hole. I've put it back on the machine. The machine has sewn the little bridges across the hole, which is basically what connects the whole inside of this flower to the outside of the fabric. And then it's finished with the borders. And it's basically as easy as that. You can see here kind of a super close-up of what it looks like, where kind of you have that wet and gone area. And essentially, once you get this wet, the wet and gone dissolves and you're left with, the cutwork effect. This is what I was saying here about how close you really need to trim to the fabric, because if you don't trim close enough, a little bit of that fabric may show. And it's actually something that, so I'm going to go back off to our software now. After doing a few Cutwork designs, I've put in a request for an additional kind of control level, because in our applique tool, we have kind of an inset option. If this shape, and let's just do this. I'm going to copy this shape, click a new design, paste it down. There's the Cutwork shape. And what I want to do right now is just click on the yellow star at the bottom, which says artwork. We're going to take the Cutwork out of it. And so here is basically what I started with, right? And what I'm saying is, if you used this same shape as an applique, we have a cool inset option here. And I'd like to have that added to the Cutwork tool. I think that would help. I'm going to see what the programmers think of that. That shouldn't be too hard for them to make that adjustment. But what I'm saying is I really like how if my border doesn't cover up that fabric, see right now it's 50-50 down the middle, and it's set at 50. Well, if I change this number to 30 and hit apply, it offsets. So now there's more of the border on this side of that line. And of course, I could go the opposite way, and instead of going 30%, I could go, I went all the way to 100%. I could go 70%. And so you'll see what happens. It goes the other way. And so basically with an applique inset like that, you're able to kind of adjust where the border lines up. And so with the Cutwork design, I found that the cut of the border was kind of very close to most of this border is on the inside where your fabric is, which, that's important too. But I was saying, if you can't trim quite close enough here, so anyway, I hope in the future you'll find when you use the Cutwork tool that we'll get a new little inset option to maybe move that border slightly more to the inside. So in the meantime, I'm just saying make sure you trim as close as you can. So I want to show you how the tool works. So basically, here's that shape. I made it an applique. Let's go back to artwork again. And, it's as easy as this. This is the tool here. When you click on Auto Cutwork, it creates the steps, for the placement line and the cut around line and the tack down lines. But it waits for you to draw the bridges. In other words, right now I've clicked on the tool and it's waiting for me to click and drag to draw in these kind of bridge concepts, right? And you can put in as many as you want or as few as you want. But that kind of becomes more of an aesthetic thing, or certainly a functional thing, because you want to make sure you have enough connection points between the outside and the inside so that it's sort of stable and secure, so we don't want to leave this flower petal without any sort of bridges, or it's going to flop around in your embroidery design. And so you draw as many bridges as you want, and when you right click again, it gives you the ability to interact with the green and red sort of starting and ending points, and when you right click again, it goes ahead and finishes the shape. And so that's our Cutwork tool. It's one of those kind of like sort of new additional tools that we've added over the last couple of years that gives a really quick result from any shape. The one thing with Cutwork that kind of makes sense is if you want to have, bridges in a certain area. Once again, I'm just going to click on that yellow star to take all the stitches out of my embroidery design and go back to the piece of artwork that it is. And I just want to show, really it's two pieces of artwork, isn't it? I mean, when we click on it and select it, it looks like it's all one thing. And if you tell it to fill it in, you can see that you've created a shape that has an outer boundary and an inner boundary. And that could be essentially any shape you want. You could literally take your drawing tool. I'll just use the freehand drawing and draw and I can't draw, so it'll just be an odd flower, There's the outer boundary. If you want, you can select it and see how this little symbol right here is the closed shape symbol, and that'll kind of close my little shape if I click on that. And then if I wanted to have a second boundary on the inside of this, I can draw it. Or I can ask the software to create it by using, create outlines. So if I want to say create outlines and say make another boundary that kind of matches this, make one of them and make it, 5 millimeters bigger. And so you have these two, an inside and an outside boundary, and they're two shapes, right? There's the inside one and the outside one, and you need to select both shapes. And it's this tool here that we use to kind of combine things together. Essentially now what I've done is made the inside and outside shapes become the same shape, which if you click on fill and apply, you'll see what I mean. It's like this flower. It has an inside and an outside boundary. I'm not sure that 5 millimeters is really an appropriate size for a cutwork. In other words, if I wanted to do cutwork, maybe I would have worked better if I would have had undo a few times. If I would create my outline and make it 10 or 12 millimeters outside of that shape, and then select both of those two shapes, combine them together, and use your Cutwork tool to convert them into the Cutwork design that's needed, to create this amazing new Cutwork blob that you can really see what an illustrator I am. And the truth is, no, when I draw my own Cutwork designs, I usually have something on my screen that I'm tracing, you guys. I'm not really a freehand illustrator, but that's how the Cutwork tool works. So essentially, if you have a shape that doesn't have any second boundary, so I don't know, you could make a Cutwork design of this banana shape. If you just click on the Cutwork tool and then right click, it'll create the steps for Cutwork, but not have any bridges. And so you would have, I guess, a hole in your fabric, the shape of a banana. It's kind of like applique, but in reverse. Anyhow, I hope you guys are finding the Cutwork tool fun and easy to use, and perhaps look again the next time you see an update. I hope to get some more functionality added to the Cutwork tool in the future, but in the meantime, it's super easy to use and a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and until next time, have a great day. Thanks for listening, and bye-bye.